Da-da-da. Hi, everyone. I'm Joy Rosa with Earthworks Acupuncture, and we're here today with special guest Fahiym Hanna, a Southern organizer who began at the Highlander Research and Education Center in Tennessee. Fahiym's contributed their time and energy to the city of Greensboro insofar as Partners Ending Homelessness, Food Not Bombs, president of the Greater Glenwood Neighborhood Association, co-director of the HIVE Community Center, and director of the Sunflower Center, and has recently run for county commissioner. Fahiym has also served in the regional capacities as lead organizer of Greensboro Minimum Wage Committee. Welcome, Fahiym.
Hey, so excited.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you here. So currently I understand you're located on Occoneechee, Tuscarora, and Cheraw territories in Greensboro.
hmm
Um, and so being in Greensboro, I'm wondering self-care for you has looked like in terms of just the impact of COVID-19.
Yeah, so the impact is great, and I mean, people have said that it's going to be a bigger economic
Yeah,
problem than it is the actual virus. Which, as we continue to go on and as it spreads, that seems less true. One seems to be worse than the other, and we can't say right now.
right.
We don't really know exactly how great the spread is, but that's why it's important that the city now takes these precautions,
Yeah,
try to lock down the city. And I have mixed feelings about it. I obviously know that there's a great risk to letting people continue to spread this disease
hmm
out, the virus. And then also, as a small business that is non-essential, I'm a perfumist on the east side. So my business definitely doesn't get to stay open.
yeah, which is a shame because it's Sensuous Sense, which is located off of East Bessemer, correct?
Yeah.
And I really do think that essential oils have a lot of healing potential, especially with something like upper respiratory infections. So I highly encourage anyone who is watching and is of the Greensboro or Triad area to check out Sensuous Sense. Um, in terms of your grassroots organizing, um, I have known you to be very passionate about your innovative model for new economics, and that's what I wanted to talk with you about today. Your CPS model, correct priority model, and can you tell us a little bit first about like the three main principles of CPS?
Yeah. So um, studying a lot of conflict resolution and ideas around peace and freedom specifically.
Mm-hmm.
The three principles are kind of a mix between all those things. And the idea is that these three principles would help guide the correct priority society model,
Mm-hmm.
but they also can extend to like people's individual lives.
Mm-hmm.
So one is consent, right? And that one is, and it's two parts. One, being able to know exactly what you're saying yes or no to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and two, having all the right information to be able to make that choice in the way that like is about your self-interest. The second principle is time, and this is like literally your time between when you wake up and when you go to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and how much of that time is spent on someone else's agenda versus your own agenda is important. The last one is um, agency.
Mm-hmm.
An agency is all the thoughts, feelings, and ideas that you have after your basic needs have been met.
Got it.
So if one is hungry, they're thinking about their hunger and can't fully like dive into what they're feeling or what they are thinking. And that's important. So it's important for people to have their agency. And the way to do that is to fulfill their basic needs first. Those three elements help kind of guide how I shape the correct priority society model. And they
Mm-hmm.
also are the goal, the end point of the model is to get people these three principles heavy in their life to where they're being able to choose more in their life.
Gotcha. And then, like, can you summarize a little bit the CPS model? Like, what does that look like? or how is it imagined right now? Because no one's really practicing this yet, but I feel like right now is a very good time to start talking about new economic models for cities large or small at this time.
Yeah, this is a great time to be thinking about those models. And for people who are not struggling with their basic needs or won't be as economically affected by the coronavirus and the lockdown and people being quarantined, this is a great time for them to be out there, either on social media or calling people on their phones, disrupting their legislatives, and also talking to their friends and neighbors about what we can be doing after the virus.
Mm-hmm.
And so the correct priority society model has been out there for about 4 or 5 years, and it still is a viable opportunity. So looking to create a worker program on the county level that allows people to work 7 to 14 hours a week
Mm-hmm.
for the county in any of the sectors related to basic needs:
Okay.
food, water, shelter, access to infrastructure, access to education. And what happens is, in exchange for that work, that labor, you get back all 5 of your basic needs in the amount that you need it in.
Mm.
So that comes in the form of rent for the housing, a water voucher, food voucher, access to infrastructure, and access to education.
Okay. We've been talking a lot about, self-care and healing. And, right now we're seeing that one of the major infrastructures of health, models of health in our society has been weakened right now because of the impact of the coronavirus. So hospitals have been flooded, less supplies. Um, and so I'm wondering if in the CPS model, if there is a room for the basic need of like preventative healthcare too.
Yeah, I think what's genius about the correct priority society model is that it creates space for people to then care.
Mm.
What's great about what you're doing as far as like really getting out there with your acupuncture and delivering it to people who need it right now
Mhm.
is that like that care is urgent. It's needed right now, but also we need to start creating infrastructures and ways of being that create more space for that to happen.
Mhm.
The correct priority society model is an attempt to do that.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to give people more time, not just for themselves, but time within their own agency,
Mhm.
time within their own ideas and feelings and with their own loved ones and their own thinking about their own self-care. So the idea is to be able to lift that weight off of people
Yeah.
and then be able to create space to add something different, something lighter, something more caring.
And more accessible. Yes, this is like part of the
Absolutely more accessible, yeah.
the reason for even talking about newer economic models. And can you can you tell us a little bit about where this idea came from, or who inspired it, or also why the name?
Yeah, so the model came from Greensboro. And there was initial research or a meeting of a bunch of organizers who were like working in their own silos, who had the idea of like maybe there's something we can all get together and work on. And that meeting happened, and there wasn't a lot that they could agree on about what was a priority to be working on.
Mm.
So there are a lot of identity issues people wanted to be working on. People wanted to work on direct care, direct action. People wanted to work on police brutality. People wanted to work on like reforming the system. So there was a lot of things, but the only thing that people could agree on was that we all needed to eat, we all needed to sleep, we all needed access to our basic needs, we all needed food and water and shelter. And for a lot of organizers at that time, that wasn't exciting. Um, but what happened is that it did develop kind of a research team that continued to push on the idea. And what that team, like we eventually came up with the name as a kind of like shorthand for what we were talking about, and it just kind of stuck.
Mm.
Um, but what we were talking about is what we were researching was exactly how expensive basic needs were. Like, just how expensive is it to feed people, or just how expensive it is to deliver water?
Mhm.
And so the research team spent a lot of time figuring out like the hours, the human labor necessary to produce these things. And we found out that actually they're fairly cheap. Um, yeah, they're actually this actually doesn't cost a lot, especially if you're talking about on a county or state or national level, the production. So we all go out into the free market to buy everything we need retail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we go into these stores, we pay a price that covers the cost of the good, and it also covers the profit that the seller is trying to get.
Right.
Those sellers get their product from wholesalers
Mm-hmm.
who are selling it to them for pennies on the dollar. And those producers are then they're getting it from people who are actually putting their hands in the dirt. To be more tangible, if you had a tomato in a grocery store and it's $3, that means that grocery store spent 50 cents a piece to
Right.
have those tomatoes in there, which
Right.
means that the grower is growing those tomatoes for pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we are talking about a county producing basic needs
Mm-hmm.
by pennies on the dollar, then we are actually talking about producing a lot for very little bit of money that
Mm.
could be more accessible for a lot of more people.
Right. Right. And what I like about the CPS model is that it is, it, I think there might have been like maybe a lot of questions about this, especially throughout your campaign. You know, how is this going to work in conjunction with the already economic model that's put in place?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you are asserting that this doesn't really take away from that either, even though we can see that it's clearly not working.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there are people on the fringes that it's not working for.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people closer to the middle who it's working for, but it also disrupts their ability to care for themselves
Mm.
or the people around them. And it disrupts their time and it disrupts their agency. And then there are people really, really working for, like, sometimes we call them the 1%, sometimes the billionaires, sometimes whatever. But those folks, it's always going to be working for, no matter how bad it is for the people in the middle, and no matter how bad it is for the people on the fringes.
Mm-hmm.
So to say that, like, there's a lot of ways in which this free market economy is working.
Mm-hmm.
But the CPS model hopes to remedy the parts in which it's not working
Yeah.
by creating a base for people to get their basic needs.
Right.
Then we can. The adventure is to go after the things that you want.
Right. I like the idea of exchanging, no matter your monetary bracket, right? That I could essentially work in one of the sectors of basic need as
Mm-hmm.
an acupuncturist, as a healthcare provider. And for like, well, for me, that's just my job. So I would, be doing that, or will be my job when I get licensed. But like I could exchange 8 hours of that and turn it into access to food or access
Right.
to,
All your basic needs. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that that's really important because while we're not in this society model of barter and trade anymore, this is still harkening back to something that did work quite well. And I feel like I think there's some murmur now of, old ways were working and we can put a new, Afrofuture spin on them
Mm-hmm.
to revive them in ways that really um, uplift and help our people. And I think that that's really quite important, no matter race, class, gender. It's really, I think one of the things that you had said was that, people who are not participating directly in this CPS model will also benefit from the amazing amount of work put into these public sectors work
Hmm.
that's actually going to improve the streets, create safe neighborhoods, better public education, etc. So I really do admire the model and the framework that it can be for, other cities across the United States, hopefully.
Yeah, there isn't any reason why in this like very complicated global world we can't have more than one system. In the same way, we can have more than one source of energy other than coal.
Mhm.
It makes sense to be able to diversify and be able to use as many of them as we can, or as many as make sense. And so this is a model that is adjacent to the free market model that we already have.
Right.
Um, and it doesn't matter how much money you're already making, you can participate in the CPS model, which is a thing that you don't find very often in a lot of social programs, or government county run programs. They want you to be a certain kind of poor. They
Right.
want you to be able to qualify under the margin to
Right.
be able to get um, access to resources that are given by the local government. And that's really tragic. That's really tragic that people only see the government as a place to get handouts, when
Hmm.
it actually could be working as a viable source of resource for people,
Hmm.
especially on the basic needs level.
Yeah. But I like this because it's an adjacent factor to a type of government, and you're already addressing these basic needs. So that kind of leaves room for the government to do other things. That this is more of a mutual aid, communal benefit and benefactor.
Hmm.
And I really admire that. And just, growing up with you in Glenwood, I mean, that was, one of the first instances where I feel like I saw that model live, but nobody was really naming it. We were
Yeah.
building it, but nobody was really naming it anything. But, we were feeding each other and watching the babies and, planting gardens. And yeah, it was, it allowed for a little more, I think, relaxation in
Hmm.
life as well. And I think that that is such a valid point right now, because even in this pause, it's an uncertain time, but in other ways, it's a very necessary time to rest. And I
Hmm.
think I think a lot of people are really realizing that this old way was not working. For your body, mind, and spirit, it was not working. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of like as a Southern organizer, um, when we were younger and getting into it ourselves, there was a culture of care.
yeah.
Um, we weren't just fighting for causes; we were also looking after each other.
Hmm.
And that some of that is lost in the social media age,
Yeah.
where it's been easier to communicate with each other, and where we would have to all get to a meeting
Right.
at 6 o'clock and
Yeah.
figure out ways to take care of the children and maybe feed each other at that meeting, and
Yeah.
dance and sing after the meeting so we can de-stress from it. It's now become like an email with the same information, and like we're moving forward in the movement, but we're not moving together as a community as much.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a really wonderful point, especially in this time of mandated quarantines, because I'm hoping that people also feel like this too. Like, we can't gather in groups larger than 10 right now. And
Right.
it just really makes me pause and um, really appreciate the times that I was in large communal groups and able to really um, feel the impact of those groups, in very specific ways, whether it was Cackle Like Thunder, whether it was Food Not Bombs, whether it was just, right, like a town meeting or something. I mean, those kinds of spaces hold a very particular energy, and you can't get that through social media. So I really
Yeah.
hope that that's not lost on us. And I hope that that is something that we will appreciate much more, and at a deeper level after this time of quarantine. away from each other, and we're just only able to connect on social media.
Yeah, well, we're getting older, surprisingly enough. And there are organizers coming behind us, and they don't have that experience.
Right.
It shows in the way that they burn out and the way that they have to force self-care and isolate themselves and push away from and
Mm-hmm.
work to be able to take care of themselves. And so it is, I feel like I feel personally responsible for getting that out there, that message out there, and really just talking about it and seeing if we can't reignite that kind of care along with the work and fire for movement spaces.
Yes, I agree. You're right. This new generation of freedom fighters, they haven't had specific experiences like we have had. I didn't really think about that until you mentioned something. I thought, oh, people are still gardening and like communal gardening and food not bombs and all
Yeah.
that. But maybe for many they aren't. And so I think it's a good time to also replant some seeds now too for the youth,
Hmm.
for sure. And also, I think that is why, again, a new economic model, whether it's CPS model or the framework from CPS, to really start to kind of like unpack that and sort of like flesh it out, because that would really help to create a culture of care again. I mean, that should be one of the main priorities in any modular society. I think that that's very important, and I feel like when we have that and we can be really rooted and grounded in our communities, it does give this air to breathe for like your own self-care, even in your daily tasks of, okay, I have food, but how am I like receiving my food from a
Hmm.
CSA, from a farmer, from my community garden, you know, my shelter. My shelter is my sanctuary, and I'm in community with other small, safe havens. So, yeah, I think that this model is really good, and it's a wonderful step in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, well, I would welcome anybody to go and read it. It's on the website, fahimhanna.com/CPS model. And it has it laid out there. It also talks about the scale. There's some other models in the research phase. We looked at lots of other kinds of models.
Mhm.
Time banking and Ithaca in New York. We looked at the
Yeah.
universal basic income. And these are all kind of kin to the correct priority society model in that it offers a alternative to the free market for people to be able to get their basic needs.
Yeah.
What the CPS model does is it scales it up. There are some communes too as well, Twin Peaks, and who are working in smaller groups of no more than 300 folks. But with the CPS model, the scale is important, and
Hmm.
also it is a little less formal than like a commune or a time banking because it's on a county level.
Hmm.
So we're talking about the city of Greensboro is about 300,000 people. We imagine that about 136,000 people could participate in the CPS model into the county as miniature contractors
Hmm.
for, and they do the work over a period of time. And while they're doing the work, they're getting a consistent supply of their basic needs coming in, food at their door, the voucher for water, access to infrastructure, access to education.
Yeah.
And, and what it allows people to do is it allows people to get into the model regardless of who they are and what kind of lifestyle they're living. And that's really important. It's important not just in how it's produced and how it will come about, but also in its advocacy. There are lots of smaller groups, fringer groups that are advocating for themselves and their own care. Um, Black trans women come to mind specifically, especially in relation to housing. And
Right.
there are folks who are advocating for them, but they are a small minority.
Hmm.
And in government, people tend not to listen to small minorities.
Mhm.
When you create a policy like the correct priority society model that affects everybody, then you give people better access. So
Right.
even a trans woman can go into the CPS model and receive all 5 of their basic needs, because it's
Yes.
big enough to include everybody. And we just have to make sure nobody is left behind. So there's that work to be done. Once it even gets approved and once it starts working, we have to make sure that it stays open and stays true to the principles that everybody deserves, their own time in the world, their agency in the world, and consent in society.
Yes. Those are three very important tenets, and I'm so thankful that you were able to come on here today. Just one last question quickly. What does self-care look like for you, especially in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, so self-care is difficult right now in that, um, well, I'm separated from a lot of my work is face-to-face interactions with people. It's
Yeah.
meeting with people. It's checking on people. And a lot of that's not happening in person. So
Right.
it makes me nervous just to wake up and sometimes count how many people I've seen today, where otherwise it would just be like just a number would be just limitless. It'd just be whoever I can fit in all
Mm-hmm.
that day. So that feels like a struggle to me personally. And the work doesn't feel as urgent when you don't see people. When it's through a computer or a text, it takes some of the urgency off of it. So that's also a struggle. But I think we have to be intentional, and really reach out to people. I know during a campaign, I spoke to a young man who is going to A&T's for a university, and he spoke to me about his life in technology. He was when he was born, or he came into youth. There was phones. Everybody already had phones.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the primary way of communicating. And he was telling me that the biggest problem they deal with is isolation, because the communication is so quick. You can communicate with somebody, but it's also very shallow. It's a very shallow communication, and that works for really well for logistics. But if you're reaching out to somebody because you want a deeper connection, but they see that your response or like their text or their message or their call as being a logistical thing, then you don't get it, and you don't understand. Like it's harder for them to say like, look, I actually want something better, deeper. And that's really difficult to ask. I feel like I don't have to ask for that. I'm blessed to be in a community that understands my needs and wants a little bit better, to where I don't need to like come out shorthanded and say, look, I need more from you.
Mm-hmm.
But when that doesn't happen, when people don't advocate for themselves that way through technology, then it doesn't happen, and
Mm-hmm.
people go without.
Mm-hmm.
And so super, super insightful, young man. Yeah, I think we all have to be more intentional, and I have to also be more intentional and reach out to people, and even try to jump on things like Facebook Live and Zoom, and just to see people's faces and
Yeah.
say hello. And so I'm hoping that it's going to be over soon.
I know, me too.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is kind of how this whole YouTube channel was actually birthed. It was out of necessity, not just for myself, but I think for everybody to start connecting the dots together, together cohesively, and as individuals, because um, it has been odd. It's been very difficult and very odd to be isolated. And, we still have these connections over these waves. So
Mhm.
I am thankful for that. But I really do admire and like that you highlighted the the way that we need to start advocating for ourselves, and this is, again, in such a time of pause, we're really starting to understand, I'm hoping, ourselves and how we work and associate with each other in very dynamic ways. And this is just one of them. And okay, here's my agency, and here are my, needs, and here are my wants. And one of them, it's human nature to just be a communicative mammal. We live in a society.
Mhm.
And so I'm still full of hope, and hoping that after this will just bring societies closer together, communities stronger, grassroots organizing much stronger and louder, because that's what's needed right now is, all of us pulling together and
Yeah,
uplifting each other.
affecting people on on a scale, on a spectrum of ways. And I'm hoping that people who are not as inconvenienced by this are taking that time to advocate for folks who are not
Yeah,
well, and to get together and organize like right afterward, just take the whole just to really be able to take the reins of our democracy. I think what's important too, in the run that I just had, I ran for county commissioner in District 8 here in Guilford County. And what I know from my experience in running is that our democracy is very weak. It's like people don't understand it,
mm-hmm.
um, and people aren't participating in it. And it's one because they don't have those three principles. They don't have their time. They don't have their agency. They don't feel like this is a consensual experience that they're having with it. And so that's one roadblock, but correct information is the other roadblock. And I'm going to continue to push for people to participate in our democracy. And that means right now, there are elected officials that you can be calling. There are no elected officials that need to be silent at this moment. And if you know a mayor or admin or council person who is silent right now, make sure that you call them and make sure they're out there working for people.
Absolutely.
This is super important that we do that if we have the space in our own life to be able to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
One last note. I was reading on motherjones.com. There's a really cool article called Greed Destroyed Our Social Immune System. It's Time to Rebuild It. And I feel like I'm almost done with the article, but I feel like even just the title of that kind of sinks into and segues from what we're talking about now. It's time to rebuild. It's
Mm-hmm.
time to, give people their basic needs, have many people's basic needs met finally, and rebuild together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I really admire your hard work over the years, especially with correct priority society model and all the grassroots work that you've been doing in Greensboro for decades. So thank you so much.
Yeah. I hope that you can get back to Greensboro soon. We
On
miss
the
you.
way. I know. I miss you guys too a lot. Oh, thank you so much, Fahiym, for being here. I will link all your linkables so that people can check out your website. And hopefully we will be speaking again soon and can, maybe have a webinar with other people who are, building other economic models and kind of have
Yeah, I'd
a
be
crossfade.
happy to support you. I'll just wish you the best out there, and I know that you're doing amazing work, and hope to really see it flourish one day. Um, I'm so proud of you, Joy.
Thank you. You got me cry. Thanks, Fahiym. We'll see you soon.
All right, bye bye.
Peace.